Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it a couple minutes until we have more people join us. Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started in just about 1 minute. We're glad you're here. So we have 43 people here today. So welcome to Indiana Youth Worker Wellbeing Project, Trauma-Informed Workplaces in Youth Serving Organizations. And we are going to go ahead and get started. So we are glad you are here and interested in learning more about trauma-informed workplaces. My name is Cassie Wade. I am the Vice President of Youth Worker Wellbeing here at Indiana Youth Institute. My colleagues, Becky Wright, Evan Dentley, Director of Quality, Megan Hubbard, Director of Communications, and Coordinator Michelle Livers are also on the call with us today. So some logistics. We are going to start today with a high-level overview of the Youth Worker Wellbeing projects, our programs that have launched, what's coming soon, and then, of course, the reason that you're here today. The session will provide a foundational overview of trauma-informed workplaces. We're going to talk about resources, the application, eligibility, deadlines. And you can use the Q&A options for questions and feel free to add comments and reactions in the chat. I can't see your faces. I can only see Becky's face. So please, please, please add comments and reactions in the chat. Let us know that you are here. As you know, the session will be recorded and attendees will receive a follow-up email with the PowerPoint and recording here in a couple days, along with a survey to provide feedback about the session. We want your feedback, so please, please, please respond. The recording will also be posted on the website. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So what is the Youth Worker Wellbeing Project? It is a collaborative statewide effort to address individual youth worker well-being, workplace conditions, and root causes of stress in the sector to promote meaningful change in youth workers and invest in their well-being so that we can provide the highest quality of services for Indiana youth. If you haven't heard yet, and hopefully you've heard, we are offering no-cost access to telemedicine and virtual mental health services through First Stop Health for youth workers across the state. And today, more than 11,000 youth workers, I'll say it again, more than 11,000 youth workers from 200 plus youth serving organizations are enrolled today, and we still have space available. So if you're not signed up yet, talk to your organizational leader about signing up. We've also launched virtual peer support groups facilitated by Hope Haven Psychological Resource. And these groups provide youth workers the opportunity to share their experiences, support one another, and receive support from a trained facilitator. I'm excited to announce, I don't know if we've said it publicly yet. So coming in April, we are going to start recruitment for our Emerging Leaders of Color Fellowship. And the goal of that is to advance the skills of our emerging leaders, facilitate connections, networks, and most importantly, diversify leadership at youth serving organizations. And the reason you're here today, so now open are grant opportunities for youth serving organizations to apply for funding to implement customized strategies for your organization that improve diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and trauma-informed workplaces. It's important to us to highlight that this project is a collaborative initiative to improve youth worker well-being across the state. Indiana After School Network, Indiana Association of Resources and Child Advocacy, Indiana Youth Services Association, Indiana Youth Institute, and Marion County Commission on Youth came together to intentionally develop a plan for improving Indiana's youth worker well-being. The organization spent more than a year talking to youth workers across the state. And based on this information gathered from stakeholders, a proposal was submitted to Lilly Endowment in November of 2022, that feels like so long ago, to improve the lives and well-being of Indiana's youth. And then in December of 2022, IYI received a $20 million investment from Lilly Endowment to support the project. And then that leads us to where we are today. So our vision is to fund diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and trauma-informed workplace efforts that increase youth worker well-being. We are focused on youth workers, and cultivate workplace environments that decrease stress. We could all use a little bit of that, right? Increase belonging, and provide youth workers the opportunity to engage fully and authentically at work. Wouldn't that feel nice? Youth worker well-being grant opportunities are expected to be offered biannually through 2026. So this will not be the only opportunity that grants will be available. And we will be distributing more than $6 million to youth serving organizations to support these initiatives. So why the need for trauma-informed workplaces? So I mentioned the managing committee spent more than a year talking to youth workers across the state, and key challenges were identified. We know that youth work can be traumatizing and triggering. So here in Indiana, 1 in 5 youth have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience, and then another 1 in 5 have experienced 2 or more ACEs. And our work with young people across the state exposes us to trauma. When I think about the room today, so there's 54 of us here, about 61% of us here today have likely experienced one adverse childhood experience ourselves. And 16% have likely experienced 4 or more. Not sure if someone on the call can do some quick math for us. So 54, I'll do it real quick. That's 9 of us, 9 of us. In my experience, though, those percentages are actually higher in our field, right? There's a reason why we get into this field. And regardless of how much we have healed from our own trauma, helping other people experiencing trauma themselves can be triggering for us. And although many youth serving organizations have implemented trauma-informed services, so we've all heard of trauma-informed services, or most of us have, for youth, youth serving organizations have lagged in implementing what would be these same practices to become trauma-informed workplaces. In becoming a trauma-informed workplace, organizations should also consider the different identities within their staff to ensure that solutions include, again, the diverse needs of staff. For example, recognizing the traumatic effects racist events, microaggressions, and bias has on youth workers of color. Again, what we're talking about here today is trauma-informed workplaces. And so high-level overview, right? High-level overview. We know that trauma can result from a singular event, a series of events, or circumstances that a person experiences as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening. And we know that trauma has a lasting adverse effect on an individual's, on a person's functioning, our physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So what's the difference between trauma-informed care and trauma-informed workplaces? So they're definitely related, and we'll start with trauma-informed care. So trauma-informed care is understanding the prevalence of trauma. So how prevalent is trauma? It's prevalent, and adversity, and then their impacts on health and behavior. It's recognizing the effects of trauma and adversity on health and behavior. It's training leadership, providers, and staff on responding to program participants. And so that's key here when we're talking about trauma-informed care. Integrating knowledge about trauma and adversity into policies, procedures, practices, treatment planning. And then, of course, avoiding re-traumatization by approaching program participants who have experienced traumatic events or other adversities with this non-judgmental support. So non-judgmental support. And so then how is this related to trauma-informed workplaces when we talk about trauma-informed workplaces? So as always, we are going to start with safety. So staff in trauma-informed workplaces feel physically and psychologically safe. So they feel physically and psychologically safe. There is a high degree of trustworthiness and transparency. And so decisions throughout the organization are made with the goal of building and maintaining trust among staff. Knowing that many youth-serving organizations, our mission is to serve youth. That being said, we can't do that without the people and our team who are working with us. And so all decisions are made with the goal, again, of building and maintaining trust among your teams and among your staff. Trauma-informed workplaces, they value peer support. So they value those individuals who have lived experience. So lived experience with either toxic stress or trauma, and they respect and honor each other's experiences. There also is a high degree of collaboration. So in trauma-informed workplaces, organizations appreciate and values the strengths and contributions of its employees more than a level of seniority or power. They also empower their employees. So strengths and experiences are recognized and nurtured. And employees have a voice and are encouraged to constructively address issues. And what I'm going to say is a culture of feedback is valued, not just in words, in action. So employees have a voice. They're not afraid to use their voice, right? So going back to safety, they have a voice and they're not afraid to use that voice because they know that their feedback is valued. And trauma-informed organizations move past race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, stereotypes, and develop policies and practices based in equity where employees feel a sense of belonging. So So we recognize that organizations are at various stages in their journey to become trauma informed. Again, many organizations have taken steps to become trauma informed as it relates to their work with youth participants. As a part of this application, we are asking that organizations demonstrate a plan to grow in at least one category. So the first category that I have listed here, just for sake of the PowerPoint, is assessment. So this can include conducting an organizational assessment that identifies an area of growth. And the goal of assessment is to evaluate and to understand the unique needs of your organization and your team. Again, we recognize that organizations are at different places in their journey. Their organizations look different, their communities look different, the needs of their staff look different. And so it's understanding the needs of your organization and your team. And it can include surveying your staff to create a plan for growth. So some of those questions, and we have assessment listed on our resource page, which I'll talk about our resource page. But some questions might be, do individuals who work in your organization understand how trauma impacts others? Do they maintain a high degree of physical and psychological safety? Do people believe that their feedback will be taken seriously? Is the organization intentional about providing choice? The next category is agency strategy. So the goal of this category is to demonstrate organizational commitment and align what would be policies, procedures, and practices with that commitment. So it's one thing to say I'm committed. It's another thing to demonstrate that through your policies, procedures, and practices. So this could include creating a plan, and I would say creating a plan based on an assessment that creates clear direction with resources available. We have resources to help, activities, and then what's the impact towards becoming a trauma-informed organization. This could be the creation of policies and procedures that impact culture. I can speak. So I joined IYI in the past year, and in my previous role, we went through a similar process to become a trauma-informed workplace. We didn't always get it right, but we were very intentional about the process that we followed. So one, assessment of staff. So we used some of the assessment resources to assess where we were at. We created plans related to this agency strategy and policy. We developed policies, again, for us to be intentional about our commitment to being trauma-informed. Organizational growth. So the goal of growth in organizational knowledge is to support the training and education of employees. So one, to increase their competency, their understanding, their skills, and create this shared understanding. So there is value in teams and organizations coming together and participating in what would be a training to create this shared understanding, shared language about a concept. And so we want to say too, as a reminder here, this isn't knowledge focused on trauma-informed practices working with youth. Activities, though, could include what I'm going to say foundational trauma-informed practices. So this could include foundational knowledge about trauma, the impact on development, the impact on behavior, with the goal, though, of creating this shared understanding to improve workplace conditions. So it can include foundational knowledge related to trauma-informed practices with this goal of creating a shared understanding to improve workplaces. How does all this come together? So workplace program. The goal is to create a climate, so tangible actions that align with the culture. This could be developing or revising workplace well-being efforts and plans that build on previous work to become a trauma-informed workplace. So again, this could include developing, revising, creating workplace well-being efforts. And I'm recommending and that you demonstrate through that plan the work that you have done to become a trauma-informed workplace and how that's related. IYI, we have created an evolving list that includes trainers, consultants, and resources to support organizations in fulfilling their goals related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and trauma-informed workplaces. We want to help you. So upon applying, grantees may choose to select, again, a consultant, trainer, or resource to support them in completing their goals. I want to say it's not an exhaustive list, and organizations may select another consultant, trainer, or resource not on the page to support them in fulfilling these goals. And I want to say it's also not required that organizations select a consultant, trainer, or specific resource, again, depending on where they're at in the journey, right? So depending on where organizations are at in the journey. It is, though, every organization's responsibility to verify and evaluate the resources to ensure alignment with your organization. So aligning the consultant, trainer, the resource with your organization, and then how it relates to the grant activities. So what you want to do with those grant dollars. And organizations are expected to contact the consultant and trainer. Again, review the links, review the resources to receive pricing information to include in your proposal. Resources. So resources can be found on our website under grant opportunities, grant resources. The resources are split between diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and trauma-informed workplaces. So we tried to make it easy to navigate, and is organized by consultants, trainers, trainings, and then resources. I'll mention that the resources today are primarily assessments. And again, it's this evolving list. So it is an evolving list. And as a part of the application process, we are going to ask you what resources you plan to use. So we want to know that information. And if there's an amazing partner or resource that you're using, we want to know this to support other youth serving organizations. So I would say the goal of all of this, we heard from youth serving organizations, they don't know where to start. You don't know where to start. So our intent is to provide you some resources with a place to start. And then we'll grow that list over time. Again, if you're working with a resource that we haven't heard about, or an amazing, consultant or partner, we also want to be able to lift that up. So tell us that information. Let's say that you don't want to use a resource on our list, which again, I will say is 100% okay, even though I think that our list has some pretty amazing people and partners on it. So I'll say that. Where do you start and how do you evaluate consultants? Workplaces. What's someone's experience in your community? What's their lived experience? And what might be experience with youth serving organizations or nonprofits? We also looked at data and evaluation. So how are the services being measured and evaluated to demonstrate impact? Also, too, then personal approach and expectations. So what's their level or degree of collaboration, style, and then fit with your organization? Because it's important that when you're working with a partner, that there's the right fit. We've also here included some common methods, what would be of evaluating sources. And so again, for this is currently for us assessments. And so these are some common methods for evaluating sources. So SCAN, CRAP, and CARS method. And just, quickly, so CARS, we'll look at the CARS method. That includes assessing the credibility of the source. What would be assessing the credibility of the source, the accuracy, how reasonable is the information, how reasonable is what you're looking at, and then is there support of the resource or the data. So as you are, evaluating additional resources, we just wanted to provide you some guidance in where you can start. Again, because we heard from youth serving organizations that they weren't necessarily sure where to start. So outcomes. These are the outcomes that we want you as a youth serving organization to work towards and that we are working towards statewide through the project. So what is it? What are the goals? What do we want to accomplish? So we want agency leaders to indicate that they're more equipped to lead a trauma-informed workplace. We want agency leaders to indicate that they've implemented one or more trauma-informed strategies. So again, if we are granting dollars to youth-serving organizations, we want those youth-serving organizations to implement practices. Youth-serving professionals, so your team, your staff, indicate positive changes in the workplace culture. So we want to see positive changes in workplace culture, which can include, related to safety, trustworthiness, transparency, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and belonging. So all of those pieces, the elements of trauma-informed workplaces. So we want to see improvement in what would be one or all or some of those categories. Also, too, ultimately, we want youth serving professionals to indicate that they can better manage their stress because of the trauma-informed workplace program. We know that life is stressful. Work is stressful. Our work with young people across the state, again, traumatizing and triggering. Mental health challenges were reported as the #1 challenge and concern for youth workers across the state. And so how can we support our employees, our teams, our staff to better manage stress, because we all have it, based on practices that you're implementing at work? So I just wanted to do a refresher on eligibility. In one of our last sessions, we had received a lot of questions about this, so I thought it would be good to do a refresher. So to receive grant funding, organizations must be a youth serving organization that currently provides programs directly for youth. And so we are describing youth as ages 5 through 18 in Indiana. So Indiana-based organizations must be a public charity. I'm not going to read that to you, but there is a description in the code. And offers programs that serve youth ages 5 to 18, or, so there's an or here, or if it offers programs for individuals in other age group, demonstrate that at least 75% of its services are youth and family related. So we recognize that there are many youth serving organizations out there that are multi-service organizations that provide services to different age youth, that they work with families. And so for those organizations who are multi-service organization, we would like, so 75% of its services need to be youth and family related. I will say that if you were eligible for participation in telemedicine and virtual mental health services, you are more than likely, 99% of you are eligible to participate and receive funding through this project. We also will accept collective applications for organizations through alliances or associations. And so that would be acceptable. I would say if you have questions about that in particular, or if you intend to apply, reach out to us, because there will be some variance in what would be the funding amounts, which I'll get to. And organizations that are not eligible at this time to apply for funding include our K through 12 schools, school foundations, higher education institutes, youth sports leagues, and government agencies. So I'll tell you, we've been really intentional about scaling the applications for these grants. We have all been grant writers ourselves. And so it's important for us to collect the right information and also keep it efficient for you as the grant writer. So we want it to be an efficient process for you as the grant writer. We are going to ask you to tell us about either previous or current work related to, and I'll just focus on trauma-informed workplaces right now because that's what we're here for. We want to know when this work started. So if you, let's say, participated in ACEs training in 2019, right? Tell us that. When did this work start? What are your organization's current challenges or needs related to trauma-informed workplaces? So help us understand what's going on in your organization. Select the categories that will be addressed. So again, we talked about the categories at the beginning of the presentation. So those categories, and it can be more than one, right? So if you're focusing your efforts on one category or there's multiple categories, you will have that option to select it. And then we, of course, want you to tell us about the activities. So the activities and their alignment with the grant outcomes. So what is it that you are requesting to do with the funding? And we want a clear timeline for those proposed activities. So when do you plan on, let's say, assessing staff? When do you plan on implementing a workplace program? We want to know what the timeline of those activities are and how it relates to the grant outcomes. We also want to know about the staff and/or board members who will lead this work. So who internally within your organization will lead this work? Tell us about the impact that activities will have on youth workers within your organization. And again, this is important. The funding is designed to support workplace as it relates to youth workers. And so tell us about how those activities are going to impact employees, youth workers within your organization, not the youth that you're serving. We want you to provide a description of your proposal budget. So give us a little bit more details of your proposal budget. And then again, list specific project resources, partners, tools. We want to know that information. So that's helpful for us. And what I would say, creating a list. And again, the goal of this is to support and help youth serving organizations. Funding. So some logistic reminders. So agencies can apply once per year for either or both of the following. So what would be up to $20,000 for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and then up to $10,000 for trauma-informed workplaces with organizations. So $20,000 for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and $10,000 up to $10,000 for trauma-informed workplaces. The application can be found online at youthworkerwellbeing.org under grant opportunities. And the grant application form, so it's a form, has the option to save and return. One of the questions that we had previously, so you can't download and print the entire application. I would recommend that you refer back to the request for application, so the RFA for those specific narrative questions or this PowerPoint. We are going to ask you for some demographic or information related to your organization. So, what's the size of your organization? What's the budget of your organization? That does not impact your eligibility. It is just information for us to collect to be able to communicate. We've, issued these many grant dollars to this size of organization. What communities do you serve? So are we making sure that we're distributing those grant funds across the state versus what might be centralized in one community? If I was writing this grant, I would start my work in a Word document. So Becky has said that before, start, making notes in a Word document. And, a couple reminders. So the focus of the impact is on your youth workers. So on youth workers, there are resources available to support you on youthworkerwellbeing.org under grant resources. And we do have technical assistance available. All things can be found on youthworkerwellbeing.org. All things under grant opportunities. Deadlines. So deadlines, grants are now open. So they're now open. Applications are due April 15th, 2024. So there was a 45-day turnaround. So we know that we're running into spring breaks. And so we wanted to make sure that we gave ample time what would be for the submission of a grant. So it's a 45-day turnaround. We anticipate on making initial award notifications by May 15th. We will distribute funds by June 30th. And then the grant implementation timeline would be July 1st through June 30th of 2025. A technical assistant. So Youth Worker Wellbeing Project Grant Kickoff webinar is live on the website. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. If it's not on the website today, it will be on the website tomorrow. So check out the website for that. We are also hosting open office hours on the first and third Friday of the month from 11 to 11:30, and links to book time are included in the request for application. So if you're interested in booking time during that open office hours, go to the RFA and you can click on the link. You can always email us. So if you have questions along the way, email us at ywwellbeing@iyy.org with questions. Our coordinator, Michelle Livers, will help answer questions or connect you with the right person who can answer questions. And just to note, this is to provide what I would refer to as technical assistance about and answering questions about your grant. We can't help you craft your narrative. Okay, so I am going to pause here and review the Q&A. And so I'll review the Q&A, and Becky, what's been answered and what hasn't been answered. And
I think we're currently caught up, but I will keep scanning and pause for more.
let's see. Yep. Okay, so there are no additional questions. So what we're going to do now is we are going to end the recording. And then if